Folks, in Maryland, Governor Wes Moore, of course, the nation's lone black governor, issued 23 vetoes today, and one of those includes a reparations bill. This is the Washington Post story, came down about an hour ago. He vetoed, this is what they say, Maryland Governor Wes Moore on Friday vetoed a bill that would have required the state to define the economic harms to black descendants of enslaved people and recommend remedies, dealing a blow to reparations supporters who counted on the only black governor of a U.S. state to be an ally. The veto of a reparations study was the highest profile of 24 vetoes Moore issued late Friday, the most the governor and rising Democratic star has fought back against the democratically controlled legislature during his 2.5 years in office. This, of course, is big news, and trust me, it was not well received by the Maryland Black Caucus. This was the statement that they released at a time when the White House and Congress are actively targeting black communities, dismantling diversity initiatives, and using harmful coded language. Governor Moore had a chance to show the country and the world that here in Maryland, we boldly and courageously recognize our painful history and the urgent need to address it. Instead, the state's first black governor chose to block this historic legislation that would have moved the state toward directly repairing the harm of enslavement. They said we are elected. Let me go here. They said we are elected leaders in the state that enslaved renowned abolitionists Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, and we convene in a state house that is less than a mile from the Annapolis City Dock, one of the nation's earliest and most high-traffic ports of enslavement. We owe this bill to those who endured forced labor and all black Marylanders impacted by enslavement, discrimination, and its long-term harm. As federal efforts to erase our history and attack the most vulnerable continue, Marylanders need decisive, courageous action at the state level. And so this is that statement. Oh, it's this. They also said the bill, which passed by an overwhelming majority in the House and Senate, was crafted to bring together leaders, impacted residents, and experts to study and make recommendations on reparations in Maryland. While unilateral executive actions and piecemeal legislation addressing disparities can contribute to progress, they cannot substitute meaningful, sustained, and comprehensive efforts commissioned in this bill to address reparations and repair. Now, Governor Moore said that the actions that he is taking as governor are going to address the issues that they have outlined. He also, this is from the Washington Post story, Moore said, given the state's economic problems, he was focused on laws that help the state recover from the severe impact of the Trump administration's federal spending cuts. I was very transparent with the leadership and members of the General Assembly that anything that fails to meet the urgency of this moment, I will not sign it and must wait for another time. Moore said in an interview, calling the reparations study the most challenging of his veto decisions. The article says Moore said he's ready to engage in conversations about repairing the legacy of slavery now, and he doesn't need to wait 2 years for the Reparations Commission to draft a study. Michael Imhotep, your response.
Well, here's the thing. Number one, I have a little bit of experience in this field. I actually did a presentation for the Detroit Reparations Task Force here March 2nd, 2024. Now, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told them and the same thing I say on numerous shows and the African History Network show. I would not put the term reparations on anything that you actually want to get passed, especially if a lot of people that got to vote for it are white. But even if they're black, and the reason why is I'm all for repairing the damage of the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, all that. I'm all for that. But what happens is a lot of these efforts get attacked, undermined, imploded, and you get a lot of people who walk away disheartened. Now, one thing he did say is that he was already enacting policies and quote unquote a culture of repair to remedy the harms of slavery. This is from the Washington Post article that you're reading from as well. So what I would focus on and what I encourage people to focus on is the structural inequities that exists right now in Maryland, California, whatever it is, and deal with the laws and policies that were put in place that created those structural inequities and trace that back to slavery, trace that back to Jim Crow, et cetera, and deal with repairing those structural inequities. But I don't, you know, I saw a previous article 6 days ago from thegrio.com about this, and I'm someone who focuses on actually being able, not focusing on studies, but actually getting policies put in place that are beneficial for African Americans that will withstand legal challenges when you get sued to overturn it. I'm focused on the end game.
Morgan.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I do think a study, as the policymaking process tends to go, is usually the first step in any. If anything's going to become a law, you've got to have some kind of study that the government's done to check the box. But yeah, I generally agree. It's like we all kind of know the history. I think the fact that this was a study that would have been focused specifically on Maryland makes it a little bit more sense than, you know, some of the national bills that have called for a federal study. I think there is a pretty broad understanding generally of the issue. But look, I mean, this is a situation is Wes Moore has higher ambitions than being the governor of Maryland. If he wants to someday run for something else like president of the United States, then he probably doesn't want this on his record. And I imagine that that is a factor in why he decided to include this in his vetoes.
Derek.
Yeah, listen, I guess I'm gonna come from a different perspective, being a state legislator and being one that have a reparations bill right here in Georgia. It didn't get any action rolling because I did use the word reparation. And the reason why I use the word reparation, slightly disagreeing with my dear friend Michael, is that Abraham Lincoln created reparation. He created reparation in April of 1862. And they didn't just use it once, but they used it twice. And so without seeing the entire legislation that Wes Moore vetoed, I think we need to use the word reparation. And when you think about the grand scheme of things, as I tell my Republican friends, there's no difference between reparation and tax cuts. There's no difference. When government take in the money, Roland, and then redistribute. And so we just passed this huge tax cut here in Georgia. And then you got the federal government right now looking to pass another tax cut. And so tax cuts and reparations in my world are synonymous. And so I know a lot of folks try to shun away from the word. I'm not sure why, for example, California, they killed their own reparations bill. I'm still boggled around that. New York.
They killed their bill because the governor gave a head nod that he was going to veto it. So they pulled the bill, which is stupid. You pass the bill and you force him to veto it.
You force him to veto. That's right.
Yeah. That's right. Roland, can I respond? Can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
My dear friend Derek, I won't hold it against you, but you talked about Abraham Lincoln. So you're talking about the Compensated Emancipation Act of April 16th, 1862, which passed Congress and it abolished slavery in Washington, D.C. That was spearheaded by a man who became Senator Henry L. Wilson, if I remember correctly. And what that was they were abolishing, that was really designed to abolish slavery in the District of Washington, D.C., and also compensate the slaveholders. OK, so that wasn't Lincoln's idea. But when we talk about, well, I'm somebody who not just studies history, but has also been involved in writing public policy in the city of Detroit. And I focus on actually getting policy put in place. 1, 2, structuring it so you withstand legal challenges, because they're going, any of these, just like with Evanston, Illinois, from my understanding, and Roland, you've had Robin Ruth Simmons here on the show. I've interviewed her twice on the African History Network show. When you talk to Robin, she said they structured their reparations program to withstand legal challenges because they knew they were coming. So a lot of people focus on, and I'm not saying you are saying this, Derek, but I've been involved in this for some time. A lot of people focus on cut the check, and don't understand, one, at the federal level, race-based policies are illegal at the federal level. Okay, that's Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Section 601, non-discrimination federally assisted programs. 2, a lot of states have various laws that ban race-based programs. California was one of them, which is why the California Reparations Task Force, they structured theirs based upon lineage, having to trace your ancestry back to someone who was either the descendant of slavery or came to the U.S. prior to 1900, because they knew, you talked to Camilla Moore, who's an attorney, who was the chair. Camilla Moore said they knew they were going to be challenged in court. So when we deal with this, and I think it's also important to understand, we have to go after low-hanging fruit, because we're in a even more anti-black climate, where you had the $2.2 billion that was given to black farmers, okay, under the Biden-Harris administration. That got attacked. We know it was $5 billion before that, farmers of color, including black farmers, in the American Rescue Plan. That got stopped by groups like Stephen Miller's group, who's a senior advisor to Trump right now. Go ahead.
Derek?
Yeah, but it only got stopped because it involved giving black people money.
It got stopped because it's challenged in court, yes. But
wait a minute, Michael. So if you go back to 1862,
yes.
The only reason why I use Abraham Lincoln, because he was the president. But 1862, April 18, when he gave $300 per slave owner, they were all white men.
No, there's about six black slave owners in Washington, D.C. that also filed petitions, and they got reparations as well. Go ahead.
Hold on. But majority of the population,
correct,
$300 per slave, were white European men. And then they turned around 4 months later, Congress said, hey, we're going to give you land too. So if you're a white European man, we're going to give you 160 acres. The only thing
the Homestead Act.
Only thing you need to do, that's right, the Homestead Act. Only thing you need to do is live on this land, use this land, till this land, and you got 160 acres.
Pay the taxes.
With about $5. But that 160 acres amassed to 271 million acres of land in the United States.
Yeah, and they gave away land for 124 years up until 1976. I teach this history. I'm familiar with it. The Homestead Act.
The demographics, my dear friend, they were white men.
Of course.
And so if the court of law is going to say you can't give money to black people, but you turn around right now, if they pass this tax bill, the top 1%, what's the number of population of the ethnicity and race of the top 1%?
Probably 90% white. I understand that. But when we talk about legal challenges,
Morgan, do you want any part of this?
Well, here's what I would say is the fundamental thing is, if we're in a position now, to me, is if we're in a position where we have only one black governor in the entire United States of America, and he's not even willing, because Michael, I consider a study defining economic harm for Maryland as pretty low-hanging fruit. If you're not willing to support that, God help us.
But here's the thing,
right?
Here's the thing.
Studies, like, what have we been talking about?
Studies and actually implementing law are implementing policies that are beneficial. And
Michael, wait a minute. Michael, hold up.
Yeah.
All across the country, cities, counties, school boards, they've done disparity studies.
Yes, harm reports, things like that.
First, to show from when it comes to contracts, and then created a program based upon the study. So to Morgan's point, what's the big deal with a study going forward, but as the governor, you still do the things you say you're doing? Why can't two things happen at one time?
Well, as I said, I'm all for repairing the damage of a legacy of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, things like this. What I would do is focus on, if you want to study something, I would focus on studying the present day structural inequities, study the laws and policies that created those structural inequities, that created the harm, and trace that back to slavery. I personally, and I've said this repeatedly over and over again, I would not put the term reparations on anything that you actually want to get past. When you are a minority population, when you're dealing with an anti-black society, No, we got to. Let me, Roland, you smarter than me. Why do most slaves that run away at nighttime and not in the daytime?
That's true.
Why do most slaves run away at nighttime and not in the daytime? Because they knew they had a better chance of staying gone if they ran away at night. I'm saying we got to learn how to run away at nighttime. Okay? Hell no, don't put. And the other thing that we have to learn how to do is show how the policies that disproportionately positively benefit Black people are good for everybody. That reduces opposition. Didn't say it eliminates opposition, but it reduces opposition. Too many of our people get caught on the reparations treadmill and keep running around generation year after year after year doing the same damn thing. No, we haven't figured this out. I'm all for repairing the damage. Focus on present day structural inequities. Focus on housing disparities. Focus on educational disparities.
Got it.
Like this. When you do your study,
I got it.
Because I've read some of those harm studies.
I got
Trace that back to the policies that go and trace that back to slavery.
Final comment from Derek. Final comment from Morgan. Then I'm going to a break.
Roland, Adam Clayton Powell, Thurgood Marshall, Dr. King, and all the others who were part of the civil rights movement, they didn't create something else. They used the Constitution. They used the language from the Constitution. They didn't create a new word. They didn't deviate. They said the Constitution. And so all I'm saying, if we're going to go back to the past and look at the ills of this country, then we just say Abraham Lincoln and everybody else in 1862 used a form, and it's called reparation.
Morgan.
And I'll just make a very practical point that if at some point, and this kind of builds off of what you're saying, Michael, is the goal, you're trying to actually, based on law, make a case for why there should be economic return, then you need some information about what that harm has looked like. That can be a big effort if you're just an individual citizen. Even if you find a lawyer who's willing to represent you, they're going to have to take on all that risk for themselves. Right. This is shifting that burden to the state that has more resources to gather that information and can be the basis for further legal action.
No. That's it.
Okay.
That's it. All
right.
I done let this damn thing go as far as I'm going to let it go. I'm going to a damn break. Right. Okay? That's it.
Did you know that the Washington Monument is based upon an ancient African structure called a tekken that comes from the mythology of Asar, Arset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus? Did you know that the panther deity Bast in the movie Black Panther and Wakanda Forever comes from an ancient African deity, a neter in ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, called Bastet? Did you know that there were 17 pyramids found buried underneath Egypt around 2011? Also, the city of Memphis, Tennessee. What's the relationship between Memphis, Tennessee and Memphis in ancient Egypt? I'm historian and national political commentator Michael Imhotep. Be sure to register for my new 12-week online history course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Kemet is one of the original names for Egypt. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Did you know that the word Wakanda is a real word? We find it in the Key Congo language, which is a Bantu language, but we also find it in the Omaha Ponca and Sioux Indian Native American languages. My class starts up Saturday, March 1st, 2025, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is a 12-week online history course. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. We do with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. When we talk about the transatlantic slave trade, we can't start our studying of the history in 1619 in Hampton, Virginia, or in Jamestown. We can't start in 1441 with the transatlantic slave trade starting with the Portuguese. We have to deal with thousands of years of history that leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We'll deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who take the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Europe, and this is what brings Europe out of the Dark Ages. We'll talk about ancient African empires, whether we deal with ancient Nubia, whether we deal with Kush, Kemet, Mali, Songhai, Ghana. This is a 12-week online history course. We deal with 80 to 100 articles. There are 200 slides that I show you in the class. There are video clips. There are 15 books that we reference. You don't have to buy any of the books to follow along in class. It's a very visual class, so we show you all that information right on the screen. The class is PG-13 as well, so you can use this with your children. Download my lesson plan from my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Register right now. Right now, it's correct strong behaviors, not over till we win. Wakanda